Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Power of the microphone. It's 7, so we're going to get started, and I want to welcome everybody. Penny and I are pleased to have you join us tonight. Before we start, a little bit of housekeeping and announcements. If you can turn off your cell phones and other distracting devices, it's helpful. And we do have a very full house tonight, so if we have to get up and get out quickly, there is a door there for escape. Brief introduction, then Pamela has the floor, then we're gonna put the chairs up against the wall. I'll help, I'm not rushing you, it's just so people can move around. Books and Susan's Homemade Cookies and Lemonade are in the front. Pamela's going to stay back here to sign books. It just helps the flow a little bit. Excuse me. We have an amazing calendar still coming up. Jeffrey Lent will be reading from his new novel next week, and we're going to do that more of as an in-discussion kind of format. So he'll read a very short passage, and the rest will be talking, both an interview with Penny and back and forth with the audience. And then a week after that, Michelle Campbell, who lives in Hanover, has a new mystery called It's Always the Husband. And then first Wednesday in June, Bill Schubart will be reading from his historical novel. And then the following Wednesday, we're going to have a celebration of Grace Paley and her new anthology of stories, essays, and poems. Nora Paley and Kevin, I can't remember his name, the other editor will be here, and it's going to be sharing from the audience and discussion. And Lizzie Boyd has a new book coming also in June. That'll be a Saturday event. And to not miss anything, we encourage you to sign up for our newsletter, which goes out every other week now. I can't do this whole thing on my chip toes. Tonight, though, we are here to celebrate the publication of Pamela Harrison's 5th book of poetry, Glory Bush and Green Banana. When Pam stopped by, I think it was a whole year ago, maybe longer, to let us know that this book was in the works, she described it as the link that completes the arc of her other biographical collections. Those other books are up front, and actually 2 of them, she has CDs of her reading the poems. It portrays a time she and Dennis volunteered for Project Hope in the tiny Caribbean island of Carriacou when her daughter Kate was young. Sadly, Dennis is no longer with us, but Kate and her husband Scott have flown in from the West Coast to join us in Norwich tonight. Yay! Pam was born and raised in Oklahoma City and earned a BA from Smith College and an MFA in creative writing from the Vermont College of Fine Arts. She's taught English literature and creative writing for the University System of New Hampshire and also Dartmouth. Her poems have been published in a wide variety of literary journals and magazines, and her honors include fellowships from the MacDowell Colony, the Vermont Studio Center, as well as the Penn Northern New England Discovery Poet Award. And if it's not too invasive, I'd like to read a quote that Cleopatra wrote about the poems. About this collection, she wrote, "These gracefully accomplished lyric poems show us the way out of self into a greater universe, as the truth of art always strives to do." Without further ado, welcome, Pamela.
Now I'm going to have to give my daughter my purse so that she can take care of my phone when it goes off. Thank you, Liza. And thank you all for coming. You know, it warms the cockles of my heart, truly, to see your faces here. And to share this book that was so important for Dennis. He was so excited about it, just literally days before he died, so unexpectedly. He had been in contact with the Carriacou Historical Museum, of which we were at one time members, to see if he could locate some very good pictures of Carriacou that might be useful for the book. That never happen, couldn't happen, but happily my publisher, Kevin, found this wonderful book the wonderful photograph online, and the title of this photograph is Approaching Carriacou, and it really looks like that. And I'm wearing blue in honor of the cover of the book, and I'm quite, I consider it quite a miracle that this book has come to print and come to light, because it was the very first collection of poems that I ever put together as a brand new graduate of the MFA program. When we returned from Carriacou, Roger Weingarten, who was the head of all of that stuff at that point, gave me a fellowship to begin to put the poems that I had just barely begun to write, organize them. And then from 1987 until 1999, that old manuscript made the rounds of the national contests in the country and was 12 times a finalist for publication without breaking through. And then by 1999, I was both so broke from all the submission fees and also so disappointed so many times, I decided I have to move on. I put the manuscript, which, now mind you, this was a typed with carbon paper manuscript, right? I put it in a drawer, and there it remained for 16 years. And then 2 Christmases ago, my publisher called to wish me happy holidays, and oh, and by the way, if you have any friends who have ready manuscripts, please have them send them my way. I've extended my reading period. And so I gave him a couple of names of 2 people that I knew that did. And then someone spoke for me and said, Kevin, I have a manuscript. Would you be interested? There was this long pause, and I could just see him sort of going. And then he said, Pamela, I have published all your books. Yes, I would be happy to learn. Well, I sent it to him. I didn't even have the, I'd read it so many times for 12 years, I thought, I know this book. So I sent it to him, and 2 days later he sent me a contract, and he said he was very excited. Well, I don't know if you know how these things work, but once you get your manuscript accepted, you can change anything in it, except the title, at least according to my contract. So then last winter, not this past winter, but the winter before, Dennis's and my last winter together, we were spending the winter for his health in San Miguel de Allende, and I dove back into the book for good. And I saw immediately from how many decades of growth as a person and a writer, I saw immediately why nobody ever considered it the finalist, because it wasn't finished. About 1/3 of the poems had never been lineated. They just kind of spilled down the page like a little rivulet, and no lines, no stanzas, no nothing. So I thought, wow, the universe is really amazing. If if it gives you this second chance to readdress something that was unfinished, it's really an amazing thing. And so I've developed a rather providential notion of how the world works now. So I'm going to read for maybe 30 minutes or something like that, and then I'd like to just take your questions, and we can talk a little bit about, if you want to, we can talk about what were the aesthetic choices I made that, following this quote revisioning of the book, and how honest I was about it being a historical document. Glasses. Glory Bush and Green Banana. And the first poem, the opening poem of the book, is Adrift on the Sea of Our Becoming. Stacks of crockery and winter clothes, photographs and furniture in piles. For days I've packed belongings like vessels for the crypt. Box by box, our once familiar rooms resumed the look of bare beginning. Empty walls hung with shadow frames of former points of view. Stored, the colored stones I gathered as a child, primer of my eye, first satisfaction of the need to know and name. I have their lessons all by heart, stored, the legacy of silver spoons whose civil rituals arranged my days like a table set for guests, and with them, shells I collected on Mombasa shores, a hatless bride, reaching for perfection into mirrors of a tidal pool. Departing toward another dream, we're peeling down to lifeboat goods, plain clothes, essential books, traveling light to a seldom storied aisle where things retain a fine necessity and breezes move through rooms with open walls. Along those shores, I'll gather other shells, partial and imperfect ones, worn to the heart by the tide. Carry a coo, a sound like birdsong, ring-necked doves sidling to sleep in a tamarind tree. This isle of reefs winks 8 by 3 miles small in a peacock sea, where refugees from plagues of ants on Guadeloupe first fled with their 1,000 slaves. Abandoned here at manumission, unprofitable as a cracked jug, suffering 2 seasons, sodden and drought. Cromanti, Igbo, Shamba survived and thrive. Among their 7,000 descendants, we'll raise to 10 the number of white planter volunteers. Arriving in a squall, the pilot takes 2 tries to land on a runway grazed by goats and cows. The road trickles out to a jungle trail. Climbing vines insinuate through slatted blinds. Rain slithers in muddy waves beneath the doors, gurgles from the roof into a basement cistern, our catchment for the year, purified for us by some eyeless fish eating larvae in the dark. Too tired to unpack, we eat a meal of crackers and sardines. The cat mules in unfamiliar rooms. Kate hums comfort to her dolls as the sun sinks into sea. No twilight softens the careworn day. We turn on the lamp, and every curious bug in the bush shoulders in to welcome us. No painter's brush, no painter's brush. And this is a little dialogue between the husband and the wife, or rather, the wife to the husband. No painter's brush. While you spend your days running island clinics, attending the sick and dying, corralling kids from under cots to test for sickle cell, trekking to make calls in mud shanties cocked like top hats on steep volcanic hills. Yes, I cope at home, unpacking our belongings and entertaining Kate, but also, darling, dealing with mahogany roaches fastened like old brooches at the neck of my nightgown, long-horned hoppers gripping the bedclothes like a guilty conscience, and beside me on the kitchen wall, tarantulas, poised tentative as a lover's hand, striped black and yellow scarlet-pated caterpillars, lascivious and plump as grandma's kielbasas, chew the frangipani boughs. Old Scorpio, like an aroused Lothario, sashays smugly up the veranda and into my sleepless nights. In a place so thickly strewn with sneaky creatures, it's hard to pretend platonic thoughts. One orchid sings its satisfactions. Many multiply delight. These insects, grown strange with camouflage and geared for eating, startle singly. In numbers, they appall. Leaf by leaf, I've watched them cart whole trees away. Caravans departing with the ravishments of Rome, eating till my aesthetics pared down to an eyeball on nature's plate. No painter's brush saves jungle blooms from their undoing. Here, dear, racks the way of the place. there was a period of adjustment, as you might imagine. And the difficulty and one of the challenges was that the homes that we'd been given to live in, which were owned by other people who just didn't come during the time of year that we had arrived because it was the rainy season, and they didn't have screens on the windows, so nobody wanted to be there for the insect season, right? They just had, these wooden louvers that when they were there in January, February, and March, and that just let the breezes in, the sea breezes in. Okay, so while Dennis did that, and Kate, we taught her homeschooling at home before Dennis went off to work, and I didn't have to go to school until a little later in the morning. So we did have the day fully organized. And I taught school at the high school, or it was called Bishop's College. It was from 7th grade to 11th grade. And there were 11 of us on the island of over 7,000 natives who spoke standard English. And it was our job, my job, and the other teachers' jobs to prepare them for taking the Caribbean exams, which would determine for the lucky ones that whether or not they got to be bureaucrats in various Caribbean governments all around. Export English. Patois winds like a mighty vine through the children's speech. So closely grown and densely leafed, I wonder how I'll root some English free. I must, if they're to pass the test that prunes their futures in the bud. How, without books, a library, or some reinforcing patter in their mother tongue, am I to teach them? I'm cross from speaking over the rub and bustle of too many kids and too few desks, above the clank and roar of generators at the electrical plant next door, where I see the attendant asleep on the floor, too dazed by the din to think or move. Now rain clatters down like hard consonants on the corrugated roof, and we're caught in the drumming. Lester's large eyes stare from his honey brown face in the rear of the rain-darkened room, dreaming again of the yellowfin he fishes for on weekends off the rocks at Belmont, with the bent wire and beach-combed scrap of monofilament line. Leandra folds her elegant bones and rebraids the ribbon in her cornrowed hair. Kinroy taps his pencil to the Hillsborough beat of hi-fi calypso that colors the street beside the rum shops and fixing tree where his father repairs every truck that breaks and car that dies from the beatings they take on the high climb to windward. Kinroy's got the music in him and knows enough about cars to make him golden wherever he goes. And Magdalene, my mischief, father and 5 brothers lost at sea, she's got some brilliant excuse for not doing homework and heads to town with her sleeves rolled up, breaking all the rules. If she wrote her reasons out, she'd have a book. Too smart for her own good. If she doesn't get knocked up first, some righteous Pharisee will take her down. We gaze past one another in the gloom, waiting for the rain to stop bringing news through the paneless windows of a life whose necessities and pleasures spring far beyond the rigid rules of my foreign grammar. Only 1 in 6 of these kids will pass the government test, skimmed like sweet cream and stolen away to life abroad. The rain relents. We return to what came first. Old tales told around a fire before the written word was known. Prometheus, who brought that fire. Fair Pandora, who saved Hope's gift. Sly Anansi, a Shanti spider, who stole ripe breadfruit from proud, suspicious Cassander. And Niami, the god of all things, who hung the moon for all Anansi's sons. Tropical math. And there's a little computation here at the start of the poem. I don't think you can probably see that, but I'll try to read it right. Tropical math. Take 300 kids in the one-room grade school, divided by 4 chalkless blackboards, times 0 desks, paper, pencils, books, plus every lesson learned by rote, equals a cacophony beyond my powers to compute. It takes no prodigy to know our 8-year-old and I go nose to nose each morning, bloodying the sacred rules of homeschooling before I leave to teach the island kids each day. Mother, daughter, and playmates by default. Now must we prove sole teacher, pupil too? Blessedly, my headmaster's got the answer. Mascot, first former, Kate will come to college. A head short of 7th grade shoulders, fair-haired child in a sea of dark, now out of the house, in school, and loosed from the frazzle of her mother's hair. Catalog of split lips, scraped shins, lumps and blood bruises, plucked ribbons, dismantled braids, hidden books, and stolen lunches. Snatched at, scratched, her path barred by teasing teens, and still Kate rises to their every bait. She sets her chin and scowls, sticks both elbows out, saves her tears for home. Today, one clots her lash as she declares she hates me for our coming here. Paradise unpruned. The tropical sun, oh, there's a word here that you're going to come across toward the end, obia. Obia, it means a witchcraft or spell. Paradise unpruned. The tropical sun sets somewhere beyond the bulwark of trunks, vines, and jungle scrub that muscle from our backyard all the way to where, we're told, smugglers load their boats with dope by night for richer markets north. Rufus strops his cutlass to help me cut a view. Armed with garden shears and pruning tongs, I'm gloved, trousered, long-sleeved, and behatted against caustic blossoms posing as bugs, venomous bandits passing as sticks, life so disguised half the time I don't know what I'm hacking at. 3 hours' work clears an arm's length more. Sinking into a chair to sip my rum, I see the sunset, just. Pearly clouds mount behind Chapeau Carré. Beaches glow, pale pairings of the moon. Godiva's working late, digging her ochre slope with a mattock and blade. 82, she waves a stringy arm tougher than her Bible's cover. Before he goes, Rufus gathers stink bush leaves for his baby's clothes. Obia, he says, against the evil devil. What do I know? I have scant purchase on a view. Well, I'm just giving you the broad pictures of what it's like to settle in. This is the first part, okay? We still have a few hair raisers. Chicken wings. Vegetables come once a week on Wednesday's mail boat. Flabby carrots, wilted leaves of callaloo, green bananas gone from the marketing board before I can get there a Thursday after school. I gather what I can. Leaking bags of rice, Moroccan sardines and mustard, expired 2 years ago, 4-kilo slabs of moldy cheddar, and jars of Jamaican jerk to coax it down. The rarest treat, when I can pry them from the freezer floor, chicken wings, all that's left of the birds that migrate down the chain. Humped in a chunk, thawed more times than I dare think. I'll fry them within an inch of our lives. Green mango chutney. Now you'll hear a word, jumbies, which was a very lively and omnipresent kind of local myth. Jumbies are West Indian ghosts of the dead, and they can turn up under any shadowy turn of the path. And a really good jumbie is a beautiful woman in white, but if she lifts her skirt, you'll see her cloven hoof. Green mango chutney. Sick of sameness, I want a condiment to dandy up drab food, something saucy to give some relish to the rice. High over the forest trail, a mango tree waves inverted skirts, casting a somber shade where, it's rumored, headless jumbies lurk. Scoffing at credulity, I climb laden boughs to steal the new fruit hanging plump as purses. Bag filled, I scramble home, peel and cut the pulp, macerate in salt, then stew with sugar, vinegar, ginger root, and raisins, gone only a little wormy in their box. After dinner, 10 bottles glisten on the counter like miser's coin, hoarded for my tasting, late, alone. Shadow at my back, greed attends my pleasure. By morning, my arms are blistered to the elbow. Boils ooze between my fingers, under my ring, and I itch like hell. Refusing the jar I offer from my store, Rufus shakes the black rattle of his Rastafarian locks, reproves. Green mango juke you, don't you know? Juke means Rufus was a godsend. Rufus was a godsend. Halloween. As all the mothers do back home, I've draped our kitchen room with crepe paper, leering cardboard jack-o'-lanterns, and a life-size laughing skeleton hanging from the ceiling on a string. I've invited 6 children up from town for a party tonight, bobbing for limes, pinning the tail on the donkey, costumes, animal masks, cookies, popcorn, and favors. One kid may prove Kate's playmate by and by. But something strange is up before the sun is down. Streams of villagers climb the hill beside our house. In hushed tones and nervous whispers, they call at our gate for the doctor. A suicide, they say, hanging in the mango. The doctor speaks. Take those decorations down or you'll be taken for a witch, he warns me when he gets home. Forget the party. No parent or child will brave our road for months to come. Island Suicide. Now this poem is in 2 parts. The first part is from my sensibility, and the second part is from my dear scientific method, medical husband's sensibility, the realist. You might say that this book is an education for the idealist. Island Suicide. 2 weeks he hung with the birds beneath the shelter of the mango tree. Slender, long fingers of leaves pieced sunshine into dappled shadow, hung sheets of sea squall to dry, and sewed each evening star into his midnight cloak. The rainbird sat at his shoulder, and the goats and cows grazing beneath his gaze were satisfied. He oversaw it all. Guavas swelled, coral and yellow, and ripened fell, plump as ready expectations, leaving delicate tracings in the long blonde grass. It was as fine a place as any he knew. After gray years abroad, working steerage and hustling like a rat through alleyways of Brooklyn, he could hear the sea and see it, bluer in sunshine than the tropical sky. Branches creaked like a ship in the breeze, and it felt like the voyage home. The doctor demurs. It wasn't like that. Bodies rot in this heat. The poor man's head detached and rolled, fly-encrusted down a hill of dirt. His limbs, what the land crabs didn't eat, were piled like dung below the rope. You want to prettify, to escape the ugly truth. The wretch was mad. So tormented, suffocation offered his broken brain relief. We'll all come to it, in our satin boxes. Though the whole village could see and smell the fact, I had to pronounce him. It made me gag. Ararat. This is the final poem of part 1. Ararat is the hour at end of the day, in a house at the end of the trail, on an island at the end of the earth, when, after filling the lonely air with all the lost civilities of Bach, I turn the lights out room by room. But before claiming dream's uncertain balm, I must drive with a broom a black tarantula from our bed. Dead, it looks like a monkey's paw on the flowered spread. In the dark outside, something stalks off, breaking branches. Banished from sleep by my imaginings, I jump when a McManacoo clambers in to crunch on crackers in my kitchen. Nightgown knotted tight about my knees, crouched at the door, I keep her company while she chews. A Manacoo's a possum. Okay, we made it to chapter 2. Okay, thank you. Chapter 2 is called Living in the Zoo. You get used to anything, right? Bug sonnet. I tried my best to overlook them, prized a sanitized life upheld by hope and good intentions, took nature's brood of blossoms for the world's true forms, but I was wrong. This paradise is long on insects. They throng at the lamp, whine and paw about my shoulders, would as soon dine on their own kind as bowls of my white sugar. Dumb appetite and deaf witness to the sum of my reserve, they've made it very plain who the real interloper is. Here, where no pane of glass or checkered screen stands between me and the voluble rain, the leggy critters move like landlords through my rooms, grimly reprove my crabbed and priggish love. Blue boa. You'll come across bananaquits, which are a charming little, very vivid canary yellow bird with very dark black wings. They're about the size of a little finch. Blue boa. All morning, as I grade papers, the pair of bananaquits nesting in the bougainvillea's lattice leaves squabble and squawk. Sudden quiet. Then a knock on the kitchen door announces Jomo, the cinnamon bark salesman, who wraps his wares in a dusty towel. We bargain. I buy enough for the year. Jomo lingers shyly, then begs to say we have a serpent. A serpent? Not a snake. The snake was that green lover's knot we found sleeping in the corner of our sunny room. Jomo says, it is a serpent from the garden. It is not shy. It will not go away. Guiding me round to our own front door, Jomo points to the 5-foot boa lounging like a pasha in the scarlet bower. I regard the bulges in its sleepy length, 2 hearts snug in the welcome of its love. The uses of enchantment. Often now, I find her playing at the furthest verge of trees. I didn't know this was going to be hard to read. Braiding torn banana leaves into placemats for her dolls. Her long hair hangs about her like a cloak of feathers. She is so lost, has wandered so far away into the deep haunts of solitude. It's no surprise when the whistling starts, when she lofts on the evening breeze the delicate thread of perfect birdsong. Boy, one of the endearing characters of the island who wandered all over the island. Skinny as a crane, sleeping enfolded by the road or in the furrow of a field, Boy has no house or home. He belongs to everyone. 6'3", schizophrenic, he jabbers at bananaquits and wrestles with the air, eats what he can steal or others offer when he wanders by their meal. He's welcome, just as long as he steers clear of the beer and won't molest the goats. But things go bad. Breezes burn along his skin. Boy takes off all his clothes and wades up to his chin in red water of a cow pond. Sucking fingers, chewing cud, children and cattle gather round. Brandishing a rock, boy keeps the world at bay. Night falls and silver shivers. An elder coaxes boy to lie down in the jail. They ship him to Grenada for a spell. Grenada ships him back. Dr. Hopeful. That was the name Dennis went by on the island. He was Dr. Hopeful. Kenesha Bristol's first baby turns breech. A bloody cord dangling from the mother's crotch sends nurses calling down hospital halls for help. No generator means no refrigeration, means no blood, no plasma, no saline, no lights, and no night flights from this tiny island anchored in the ocean's softly suing dark. 2 months ago, my Hope Doc had to call the Coast Guard cutter up through heavy seas to save a young mother in convulsions. Bent over her travail in the heaving hold, looking in his life vest like a wounded frigate bird, he remembers now how his own spirit tossed on the waves of steeps and troughs. That night, the baby died, though the mother lived, and in Grenada was delivered of her lost hope, so gone to the world she never believed his tale of so much danger in the dead of night. Now, when Kenesha's baby's heartbeat stops pulsing through the cord, the doctor steps outside to mourn beneath a canopy of stars. Halley's comet curls, a vagrant comma in heaven's unbroken code. He wonders again why he came, what it was he hoped to do. Then, with one swooshing push and a wail loud as a cutter straining through a gale, Kenesha's infant slithers limp and still as a drowned manitou onto the bloody bed. The doctor holds the tiny body close, breathing his last extravagant hope into its thimbleful of lungs. Minutes pass. His eyes blur with weariness or tears. The deck of the baby's chest rises and falls on the desperate waves of his desire. But the borrowed breath at last takes hold, harbored in the body of a boy whose name and strapping health thereafter make a sign of saving grace to all who know the truth of baby Dr. Hopeful Bristol's birth. Lemonade. Bored beyond the bounds of shyness and itching for some traffic with the world, Kate lugs our gallon igloo jug sloshing and knocking against her knees down the long hot walk to Vogelsburg. Kate clutches 10 Dixie cups in one hand, in the other coin purse and lettered sign, which means the lemonade's heavy weight, hung from her neck on spare hair ribbons, soon rubs her tender skin first red, then raw. At the crossroad, out-of-work loiterers and afternoon drunks, drawn by her presence but lacking any goods of their own to trade, are charmed by the white child's charity. No coin among them, and she too kind to withhold. And then this was one of the very gracious lessons that I learned while I was there. Mr. Clement gives a lesson in good manners. I come all business to his shop to see if he will mend my broken chair. Sawdust, like golden snow, drifts in the notches of his lathes and saws, lights the dusky halo of his hair. I start straight in with what I want, how the cane broke, what I'd like to pay. Mr. Clement looks twice away, abashed, sets his tools down, wipes his face, waits before me with his proffered hand. Greetings first, I learn. How the family is, then how things prosper at the school. Our hands joined all the while, moving gently up and down, raising the rungs of our relation to that cordial height where work may rightly start. Dancing the Cake. I wish I'd had a video camera for this one. Dancing the Cake. Cocks crowed hours ago. Now does spent grandees in the green corn rows. From the brides and grooms, flocks of village women flow, crowding the road. To the baritone beat of goatskin drum in high fandangle, Cosmitha and Georgina dance the cake right. A mother ruckus to fructify their children's wedded bed. Hips quake, milk dimples in the pail. Feet jig, banana swells on the tree. Skirts swirl, nectar oozes for the bee. Frosted, gaudy, hoisted on trays above their heads, stacked castles slicken in the heat. Up and back the mothers strut, shimmy and sweat. Sweet potency, sweet meat, so hot it's a wonder the cakes don't slide. They make their business mirth. Come the rhythm, come the body, come the baby's birth. Okay, and then a lot of other things happen, and we begin to find our footing in the community, and it's quite extraordinary, I think, these days, you know, to be in the minority rather than the majority as a white person. And I have to say, I have never been among such kind and gracious people as these islanders. One of the most moving things that happened was a little lady who had one of those little crutches, you know, that she sort of held under her arm this way, and she walked all the way up to our house, which was always somehow at the end of a road somewhere. And she handed, Dennis was seeing patients, so she handed to me this little, looked like a little nest of newspaper, torn bits of newspaper. And she had spared from her own stores 3 tiny eggs that she'd wrapped individually in newspaper to give as a gift to Dr. McCullough. Oh my goodness, to learn a lot. So I'm going to read that little poem that she generated for me, Enough. Friends, you bring me precious field eggs, tiny, wrapped in newsprint, bags of cornmeal ground by hand, soursop, pumpkins, guava cheese in season, and quarts of pigeon peas rattling in a milk pan. And I, who have always given what I needed least, whose rooms have wheezed with plenty, see myself burdened with belongings, spending a wealth of worry over loss. Take now my gifts, new needles uncorroded by salt air, fishing hooks for your lines, extra shirts and shoes, and all my gratitude for teaching me how much a little is. I think I'm going to stop there and ask if there are any questions. Nice to share those stories again. Anyone? I'll start. Why don't I start talking? Oh, yes, Liza.
So my question is, you said you got to change anything. How much did you change?
That's exactly the question that needs to be asked. I did take the liberty. I figured the universe had given me an enormous gift. Although I considered the manuscript pretty much of an historical document, and I worked extremely hard to maintain the diction that I had, to maintain the perspective and voice of that young woman that I no longer was, but I really grew to like her and respect her. She was honest. It was hard. And I kept the arc pretty much the same. I did move maybe 3 or 4 poems around. I tossed one out that was egregiously horrible, and I put one back in that had been in a chapbook that had been an initial, that got published, won a prize way back when, with about 8 poems from Carriacou. I put one poem back in, and I did allow myself to clarify. Sometimes I joined poems together to make like Tropical Math had been 3 poems that didn't talk to each other, but then when I put them together, they did talk to each other. And I did give myself permission to lineate all of those little, I call them waterfall poems. And they just sort of spilled down the page. It was all the rage back in those days. But I did, I mean, I could see right away. I just could see where the lines were, where the stanzas were. So I knew I'd learned something, and I figured, why, I'm not going to not put that in. So I did do that, and I was astonished at how much music came out. All the rhyming somehow just began to be hearable, and again, in a way. So I was very gratified by that. But I did my best. There are some things that yes, all right, I did change that little order of wording, you know, maybe I tossed out a word. Yes, I mean, it is a hybrid, let's put it that way. But I did try very much to try to stay true to what had originally been written, the whole feel of it anyway. What do you think, Cleopatra? Did I? Pretty well?
Yeah.
Okay. It's one of my readers. So anybody else? Yes.
Did you create any new work for this?
One poem.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, let me. Deming wondered if I created any new work for the book. I'd like to read that poem, actually. It's a very, very good poem to read. It's called Mermaid Mama. Mermaid Mama. There were 2 hotels on the island, 2, maybe 3. And one of them was called the Mermaid Hotel, and we spent a lot of time watching the sunset from the bar at the Mermaid Hotel. Mermaid Mama. A 3-masted schooner anchors offshore, and the waitstaff at the Mermaid Hotel are caught one short for cocktails as we arrive. While thirsty tourists settle in for sunset, Glenna hugs Kate into the busy kitchen, winds her braids into 2 rosettes and studs them with red hibiscus flowers. An 8-year-old mermaid mama emerges through the swinging doors, dressed in a fresh apron, a crisp white towel folded over one arm, a pad and pencil poised to write the orders for dark and stormy and pina colada. The charmed crowd helps her with spelling. Folks call her name and wave as we walk home. Kate became such a wonderful fixture on the island. Yes, Kate?
They had really good rum raisin ice cream. And they taught me how to make it, and it was real.
Real amateur.
No, I mean,
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes.
And when you were doing this and delving back into an earlier self, what sense did you have about how time had changed you and Dennis? I mean, did you have a great sense that
I
you
think
were
that
different?
this experience changed us quite a bit. I mean, I had traveled with Dennis to Africa and the Arctic and Central America and everything like that, but we had never, and I mean, we were bonded by the time all of those adventures had happened, but when this happened, we were parents in addition to being individuals, and so we had this child, this very, very brave child with us, who was incredibly isolated. Blessed, I mean, I didn't read tonight some of the stories of when she finds her soulmate, and they play together, and the 2 of them they become just essential for one another. And Kate became, we have photographs at home of her. I mean, literally, she came up to the shoulders of the high school kids, you know. But there she was, her little white face, and in all the parades for the end of the school year and everything. So, Kate, honestly, you know, she could have said, "I never want to go anywhere ever again." But that first time when she said she hated me for coming there, I wasn't quick enough to say, "But it was your father." But it made it. She's a wonderful traveler. I think she got a taste for travel at that time, and she's the one who worked her way in. There are poems where, shall I read another one? I'll read another one about. I'm sorry, I should have left all those in. I think.
and I loved school, that first poem that you read was the beginning. If you look at photos, towards the end, it was a very, the kids came and changed, I mean, the attitudes were very different from the first poem too at the end of the year.
Yes, yes. Well, let me just read, I'm going to read two contrasting poems. One's called Dregs. And it was how long, you know, she existed from day to day in this solitude, you know. At one day I was grading papers and doing things, and I heard this book sail across the room and slash into the wall. And she had just exhausted every interest that she ever had in picture books. She just couldn't, and this was only about a month into our stay, where she had to spend so much time by herself. Well, I had actually prepared for that, and I said, "Come with me." And I took her into a closet that she didn't know about, and there was a box as big as this table, filled with chapter books, and books with words, and mythologies, the Norse mythologies, and everybody's mythologies, and I opened the door like this great treasure chest in her eyes, and it was wonderful. She became a reader. That was the other thing that happened, one of the great riches that happened from it, that she became a reader. But there was still this difficulty of loneliness, and let me see if I can find that. Dregs. I watched this happen one day. I was sort of standing behind her. I don't think she was aware that I was looking at her. Dregs. Kate's eyes moved like a blind man's hands over the contents crowding glassed cases at Mrs. Joseph's store. Stretching her attention over trinkets and plastic toys, she reads deeply into every shape, considers every cranny. Bound in a loneliness that yawns like a maw in the heart of every day, willing knickknacks to sustain her, she inches her fingers across the glass as though keeping her careful place in a difficult text. She's read it all too many times. Whistles and jacks, dolls and balloons, dead things. But she did wander into, let me see if I can find, sorry. I'll just read this one, because finally she becomes such a fixture that they actually ask Kate to participate in the big drum dance. This is something that the natives took to the Queen of England to perform. And then they were doing it at a blocko, and they asked Kate to sit with them, with the powers that be during this. Rough magic. Kate's won her place with Susan at the blocko. Susan was her soulmate. And Big Drum. Sitting at Miss Ina's knee, shaking a red rattle in time with the beat, she dangles a pink flip-flop from her toe. In petticoats, Susan passes Papa Laba's cup. Fire lights the whites of teeth and eyes. Kate's face glows like a ghost of the moon in a camera flash. As the big drum ends, reggae and calypso blast from amps stacked like obelisks at Bogle's crossroad. Music swells, orgiastic, catching at the circle of revelers, rippling out in a galactic spiral through the crowd until even shadowy bodies at the outer edge of dark sway like sea fans in the oceanic tide of sound. The dusty scene is weirdly pretty, dark arms flailing and loose hips grinding, so far removed from parades marched back home, memorial days with lifeless wreaths and marble tombs. Pushed back when the center circle grew, I watched Kate across uncrossable space as Logan, the horny schizophrenic who wears no underwear beneath his holy clothes, draws near. Pale moon shines and dark stars spin. Island women guard her as a mother would. Kanisha plants an elbow like a truncheon on his chin. Kate's mouth opens in a perfect O. Just today I sent her to Miss Ina's for some rice. Tiny grains spilled after her down the trail. Anyway, so there are other poems to read. Thank you all.
My pleasure. So, Ken will be here signing cookies and lemonade. Have fun.